Chapter 5, Part 6. Getting a little nervous because if you notice the end of Part 5, I had some issues. This computer, because I teach for 3 schools online, and I teach live too, but it's just this thing's had a lot of wear and tear. I think it's toward the end of its life, my little Mac Airbook. Okay, so interestingly enough, we've looked at different Adobe. There's a bit of timber in here, but I think that's just their modern day to hold it up. But some of these earthen structures, because that's our most common material. We're going to look at Pueblo Bonito. I've actually been to this. This is in Chaco Canyon, about 150 miles away from where I live now. Just amazing, stunning place. One of the largest structures of its kind, about 1,000 years old. The Anasazi are people that were around in this area, excuse me, in the northern Mexico, and throughout New Mexico, a little bit of Colorado, Utah, and Arizona as well. And there are people that have died out. Now, we don't know if they've completely died out or just sort of became a different tribe or whatever. We think that the common day Pueblo Indians are ancestors of these people because they're building in a similar way. Okay, but this is one of the largest structures ever made this way. And there's water down here. There's a little river. You can't really see it, but it's kind of a crossroads for trade, and that's why it was so large. But the idea that you would construct something, and there's several different structures. I don't mean to mislead that. This isn't the only one. This is just the largest one in this spot. But you would construct high walls, for instance, like you can kind of see out here, high walls, little tiny windows that would wrap around an interior courtyard, because you can protect it against enemies and animals and weather as well. Similar living situation in Mali, Africa, 10,000 miles away. We are in another continent, but also culturally or lifestyle-wise, we're dealing with a lot of wild animals and a lot of perhaps other tribes that want to attack. A lot of mud that is available to them, and not a lot of rain. So in both cases, building out of mud, excuse me, because you're not going to get as much rain. This is still occupied, as has been continuously occupied. I don't know if you heard me or if it cut off, but Taos Pueblo, which I am about 2 hours away from here, is the most continuously occupied building on Earth, and it's from about 200 years previous to this building. But same idea that it's functional, it works. The lifestyle hasn't changed all that much. Still hunter-gatherers, so this is how these people are living. All right, individual homes, another subheading here. Every time you see green, you should think about like that as a subheading, and it has climate concerns, aesthetic preferences, and cultural choices. This is a beautifully preserved, as opposed to, and it is reconstructed, but I will say as opposed to something that has survived over the years. It was Pompeii and Vesuvius, Pompeii was near the Mount Vesuvius, which is a volcano, and all this ash piled through very rapidly and preserved all these paints and paint colors from the 2nd century BC. So this is over 2,000 years old, and look at these paint colors. And we don't have a lot of Roman paintings or really any Greek paintings, partly due to just time. But this is preserved really beautifully. But these are individual homes, but I would say they're in a network of alleys that almost act like hallways. All right, so the House of Veti is excavated in Pompeii. Spacious, beautiful interior courtyards, which we're seeing in here, airy, open, good temperate weather. But this is for the wealthy of the ancient Roman Empire. Now we are 1,500, 1,600 years later, and we are still in Italy, and this palace, this actual home, it's not quite a palace, but it's a home, was reconstructed in a neoclassical style, meaning it's new version of the classics, which the classics or antiquities, those two terms refer to Greek and Roman. I know they sound kind of generic, but they aren't. So we have, what do we have right here? Ionic columns right here. We have some statuary. We have the pendentive with a, well, there's not really much of a frieze, but there's like an emblem here. We have a dome here, but there's a lot of stuff harkening back to Rome. Okay, in China, we don't have an actual house here. We have like a little ceramic version of a house. Now, in China, this would probably have been a mixture of wood and ceramic tile or different things for these roofs. But this is a model of a house from the Eastern Han Dynasty, and its cultural values, and it's also weather, that kind of thing. So there's a couple different things happening here. This is a better example where you can really see the extremity of the rain in this in Indonesia. Indonesia would be the opposite of the desert. This is the tropics, heavy rain. So you get a lot of rain, so you want to wick that rain off quickly. Deep eaves, this is an eave right here. So you don't want the rain to hit the side of the house or into the windows, so you make a big area jutting out quite a ways. And then even look at this, there must be flooding. That would be likely if this thing is raised up. So you see a lot of houses like in New Orleans, in the south where they're near the Mississippi River. You see it raised up like that. There's even houses in Sacramento that are built this way. But this part is covered, so it looks like it's a two-story house, but it's only a one-story house. But you see how this is ramped up. There's heavy rain, thick vegetation, heat, and insects. The heat also could pass through here and kind of cool the house. Wind could come through it. Insects would be kept out by the closed wooden doors. So the internal spaces is in the Toba Batak, sorry, my dyslexia, have symbolic meaning. Internal spaces are maternal. The house itself is a body. And we see that in many cultures. The house is sort of representative of a body. Christian church, that's the same thing. It's up on stilts, or those are the legs, the roof is the head, and the trapdoor would be the navel. Okay, this is a painting of a teepee. So the North American Sioux are a traveling, or what we say, a nomadic culture. Now, I've heard different stories where they aren't actually nomadic, but when they were hunting, they would travel with these teepees. So they didn't really live in the teepees other than during hunting season. So I'm not sure on the truth on that, but that's what we associate with many Indian native cultures, and we see it here depicted as the teepees here. So that would be trying to keep the heat in. They're very small, and they were portable. Frank Lloyd Wright is engaging with local materials. So he's dug all this rock from local sources. There's quite a bit of rock here in this river, rock right here. So this whole area in Pennsylvania, and I can speak to that because I lived in Pennsylvania, very rocky. So he wanted it to look like rocks. And then he's built the house right over the river and waterfall, and this is called Falling Water, and it's influenced by Japanese and Chinese architecture. Commercial architecture, and I'm going to stop there, and hopefully this will be the last one.